All right, everyone, welcome back to the Be Healthy and Thrive podcast. I am Brianna, your host, holistic health and life coach and essential oils advocate. And today, as we continue to talk about healthy mind, healthy body, I have with me Heather, who is also an essential oils advocate. I was going to say foodie, but that's not the right word, but somewhat obsessed with something, oils. But she's also a therapist and a mental health blogger. And so she's the perfect person that I thought of when I was really thinking about my own journey and what I find that my clients and people talk about around struggling with overeating or not eating or over-exercising, not exercising, just the addiction part of it that her and I were talking about earlier that is often kind of shunned upon or shamed upon or not acknowledged. And so I really just wanted to bring her on to kind of share her thoughts around this and encourage you guys and give you guys tips. So thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you for having me. I was really excited when you asked about this and, thought about the idea of us talking about addiction in particular, but also how it relates to exercise and food. So I'm very excited to be here.
Yay. So can you just then start us off with telling us a little bit about you, what you do kind of in your day job, but also what you do with your blog or blogs, because you have two. So tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So I guess by trade, by education, I'm a therapist. So I have my degree in counseling. So that's sort of my day job, is I support people who are, going through some difficult moments in their lives and, for a lot of different reasons, not just addiction in particular. So that's kind of my background, but I've had my mental health blog for, I think, about a year and a half now.
Only a year and a half?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So I've known you as long as you've had your blog, probably.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah. I think I started it maybe 3 years ago, but I kind of wrote a couple blog posts and kind of left it, and then I came back to it. And so, for the past year and a half, I've been posting once a week. And I really enjoy it. I think, my calling has been to help and support people in particular with their mental health, but also, their health in general, their lifestyle, and that's where sort of the essential oils and meeting you, Brianna, has come into play as well, because there's just so many benefits, and I'm still learning all the benefits. It's endless, with how essential oils can help with your, emotional needs, health, wellness, like so many different things. So, so I'm also a wellness advocate for doTERRA. And I do, my second blog is it's a food blog, but it's particularly educating about using essential oils in your kitchen, in food, really easy to do recipes. I have a lot of food bloggers that share on there as well. So that's kind of been my side project, I guess, for the past 6 months. But that's kind of exciting too, to kind of mix everything together, because there's so many benefits that you can receive from using essential oils in your food. It can be fun, but it can also be good for your mental health. I'm focusing on lavender this month, so using lavender in food. A lot of people don't even realize that's the case, but just the aroma itself can really produce a lot of relaxation and help you to kind of get through your day. So it kind of marries all of that together. So that's a little bit about me and what I do.
You do so much. And we have a cooking webinar we're doing in June too, for those listening. Or she's going to tell us her ways around cooking and all that stuff with the oils. But I think just what you do is so great. I mean, even before we connected over the oils, just reading your blogs around just really a simple yet very profound way that you approach mental health. That's understandable, and it's also like approachable and encourageable. I don't know if encourageable is a word, but encouraging. And so today, I wanted you to talk a little bit to go, we have this series around addiction, which I'll definitely link in so people can read it. But just around food addiction is probably bigger than exercise addiction, but we often look at people who exercise a lot and we give them a high five, but sometimes it's a struggle, like the mental part of it. So maybe you can explain to us just what is addiction and how can that show up in your life?
Yeah, for sure. It's a good place to start. And I wrote the series because addiction can be a part of pretty much everybody's lives in some way or another. Like maybe not for the, the person in particular, but they might know somebody, their friends, family. They might work in addictions, because addiction is just such a large problem in the world. So many people are going through it. And so I felt like it was important to kind of touch on the subject. And the blog series in particular deals with substance addiction. So, for example, alcohol, opiates, things like that. But addiction can be in so many different areas, including food. So, I guess just to kind of define what an addiction is, it's basically something that happens to a person where they become dependent on either substance or something like food. Can be gaming. Gaming is a big one. So something that they're doing, something that they're eating is giving them a benefit, right? So for food in particular, it could be that, it's giving them some sort of pleasure, right? Like some people really enjoy eating. Or, there's a lot of different things that can happen with alcohol and substances as well. It might be that they're dealing with a lot of mental anguish, and it's giving them sort of some freedom from that, some relief. And so that's how it starts, is that somebody is using a substance, using something for a benefit, but it gets to a point where an individual is using it to the point where they are impacted in their daily life. So it could be that they're becoming dependent on this substance, and so they need more of it. Because we might get more into this a little bit later, but what's happening in the brain is that you become dependent on it, and then the chemicals in your brain says you need more of this. So then that's what happens, is you're having more and more of the substance or the thing that you're addicted to, and it's impacting on your life in a lot of different areas. It could be socially, you're withdrawing from people, or your behavior becomes so obsessive that that's the only thing that you're focusing on, as well as a lot of symptoms and side effects that can happen as well. So that's basically addiction in a nutshell. It's focusing on something and becoming so obsessed or addicted to it that it becomes a huge part of your life. In the end, it becomes really detrimental. So in particular, with food, I also wanted to kind of mention that it can sort of look like three different categories if you want. So the first category is that somebody becomes really obsessed or focused on food to the point where they could be diagnosed with a food addiction. And so that in that instance, it can be determined as an actual food addiction, right? So it starts with using food in different ways, obsessing over it, and then it becomes an addiction, something that can be diagnosed by either a doctor or a psychologist. And then the third category would be an eating disorder, what's known as an eating disorder. And what a lot of people don't realize about eating disorders is that it's not so much about the food. It's not about the addiction to the food or what the food sort of, those pleasure-seeking reactions to it or anything like that. It's more about the emotional component, right? So that's sort of where I wanted to define the three. Food addiction can stem from being really obsessed and really over-identifying with food and things like that. But eating disorders is a whole different problem. And also, the other thing I wanted to mention is that, for a lot of times when you hear something, somebody talking about, oh, okay, that sounds kind of like me. Like I'm really, lately I've been eating a lot, emotional eating. That kind of sounds like me. I think I might have a problem, right? But the important thing is to see your doctor, see, your if you have a therapist or a psychologist, and get checked out. Find out more about what's happening for you, because it could be something totally unrelated. So I think that's another important part of looking at this area and the problem, because it can be really easy to over-identify when there might not be a lot going on for you. It might be that you're really focusing on your health and wellness, and food is a big part of that. But that it's not necessarily become such a problem for you that it would be identified as an addiction. So I hope that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So you said 3, and I don't know if I caught it: food addiction, like a diagnosis, eating disorder, and was there a third one?
Well, the first one would be more, somebody, and this is big right now, I think, just focusing on your health, wellness, food in general. So it becomes a big part of your life, like for example, for me right now, meal planning is a huge part of my life. I'm really trying to get it down to almost the science of how much I'm eating, how much I'm spending on food, so it can be a really big focus of somebody's day, of somebody's life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a food addiction or an eating disorder. So the first one would be sort of categorized as a non-problem, I guess, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, because I love that you said that versus just the food addiction and eating disorder. And I love how you talked about over-identifying, because, so say now as a health and wellness coach, I did have an eating disorder. I know I did, because of the way that I, both ends of the spectrum. I was definitely anorexic because I was not eating even physiologically the amount of calories I should eat for the mental and emotional part. And then I was emotional eating and binge eating, right? So all those. But now when I'm thinking about, similar to you, looking at how much I'm eating and still making sure I'm meal planning, still making sure if there's snacks, they're healthy snacks. I would not say right now that is obsessive for me. That's actually just a way to not have an eating disorder again, for me at least, right? And so I love that you pointed out that there is a difference, and not to over-identify. And still, and there are times where I'm like a titter-tottering between it, like, oh man, I can't eat this. Like, then I check myself and being like, choosing, like, no, you can choose, and you're not who you used to be, and all these different things. But I love how I just really love how you pointed that out.
Yeah. And I think a big indicator is the impacts. If you're focusing on your food intake, or you're going through a lot of emotional stuff, then there might be a problem, right? You might want to consider what is actually going on for me. Maybe I do need to seek some more support, or just find out what's happening. Go to your doctor, have a checkup, talk about everything that's going on for you, so that you can know more. But yeah, I think that, for some people it might seem like meal planning, or like really considering what you're eating, or how much you're exercising, that might seem like a lot. It might seem like you're focusing too much on it, but there can be a healthy balance. So I just thought it was important to kind of point out the 3 different ways that somebody can be focusing on food, or become addicted, or even have an eating disorder. So.
And what would you say, in your experience with what you've studied or working with your particular clients, are some of the leading causes that may cause a food addiction or an eating disorder?
So I in particular would talk to people that more so have an eating disorders, or the precursors to eating disorders. So I can sort of focus more on that aspect. But there could be so many. A lot of times what happens with eating disorders is that there is trauma early on in life, or anytime in life, really. A lot of people I talk to are younger, so the trauma is going to be a bit earlier on. But something happens in their life where it's so impactful that it's causing a lot of emotional disturbances, challenges in their life that hasn't been processed. Perhaps they haven't talked about the trauma for a lot of different reasons. They might be embarrassed. They might feel like it's their fault. So many people hold on to things that they've gone through in their early life that they're not ready to talk to yet. And so this can manifest in different ways, including through eating disorder and issues with eating. And then other things that can happen are, the messages that we receive from outside of ourselves. So that could be from social media or magazines or fashion industry, where, even still predominantly today, you're sort of supposed to fit a certain image. Models look a particular way. There's been some change in that, but more so, if you open a magazine, what do you see? You see tall, slender, all of those things. And so I think that, especially for younger people, both male, female, other genders, they're going to identify with that because that's what they're seeing. That's the messages that they're getting from the world. That this is how you have to look. This is the way that you have to be. And so those messages can really relate to how you feel about yourself. And a lot of times that can impact someone's self-esteem. And it can even happen, not even externally to the point where you're opening a magazine. It can happen in the family of origin. So from the messages that you're receiving from, your parents or relatives, if you're constantly being told that you need to lose weight, you need to exercise, why don't you look healthy, over years of hearing this, that can really impact on someone's self-esteem. And then this can relate to body image issues, and then, going down the path of an eating disorder. And I think that, the biggest thing to know about this is it's not somebody choosing, to see food or see themselves in a certain way. It sort of is something that is sometimes beyond someone's control. And then what happens is that to regain that control, they use food, they use exercise, other things to try to feel like they are in control. And what happens is, as you mentioned, different ends of the spectrum can happen where somebody is restricting their diet to the point where, they're extremely underweight, which can lead to a lot of health conditions, or binging to the point where it's also really unhealthy, or a combination of different things, right? Or overusing exercise. I think I don't know the statistics on it, but for males that can be a big one, where they're overusing exercise so that they can get to a certain weight or certain body shape, things like that, to the point where it's really detrimental on their health and their well-being. And it actually doesn't help, the root cause of it. It doesn't help with your self-esteem, but it maintains that control, that feeling like you're making these choices, compared to when they experience that trauma or they experience those messages from outside of themselves. They're not in control of that, right? So I guess that was
a beautiful answer. And so I think it's beautiful what you were saying around control, because it's so interesting. Every time I talk about my story, that's always what I say. Like, for me, I was on that journey of eating healthy and lost a lot of weight and was feeling good, but then there was a trauma in the sense that a huge hurricane came. We had to move away for a bit. We came back, all my friends were gone, and this is like ninth grade, whatever, beginning in high school. And I felt I literally was out of control. Mm-hmm. And I told myself, I didn't tell myself, subconsciously probably, I just wanted to gain control again. And so I just really focused in on what I was eating, really focused in on how much I was exercising. Mm-hmm. And I became addicted to exercising a lot and eating less. Mm-hmm. And that's really what spiraled it, because it felt like I can't control my emotions. I can't control that we're living in somewhere else for a little bit. I can't control that my friends are gone. And so I'm going to control what I have been controlling, actually, in a healthy way for the last year, but I'm going to super control it. Yeah. And so I love that you pointed out that we are choosing to control, but we are just doing it out of trying to protect ourselves and survive based on that trauma. So what would you then, actually, before I say that, let's talk about the male thing, because I think that's very I just want to even give, if I don't know, somehow males are listening to my podcast right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just because even if I think about my husband, and you're saying the exercising, and he told me when he was a kid in high school, he started exercising, lifting weights. Why? Because he wanted his body to, he wanted to be a man or what, all these things.
Yep.
And so in your experience, have you had a lot of males or heard of a lot of males who have struggled with eating disorder or exercising, or I don't know?
I've definitely talked to males who either have been diagnosed or are concerned about their behavior or the impacts of their behavior to the point where they're seeking help. But I would say predominantly it's females that reach out. So, I mean, statistically, I don't know if there's, like kind of a number that you would seek, females compared to males. But I mean, I think that males are just as impacted and can experience something like an eating disorder or over-identifying with exercise to the point where it's, becoming a problem for them, for sure, because, it's they can have experiences of trauma, just like you mentioned. They can have experiences where they're being given these messages either from people outside of themselves, family members, or even internally. I think that there's another section that I didn't talk about is comparison. So a lot of times, especially teenage males, they can really compare themselves to each other, and so wanting to exercise, wanting to bulk up, wanting to look a certain way, that can really happen for them too. So I think for sure, I think it's not talked about as much, and maybe males, maybe they don't feel like they can reach out, but they're going through exactly the same thing. Impacts can be really devastating, can be really really bad, in terms of their health, in terms of long-term health consequences as well. So I always suggest, if anybody's ever worried about their diet, if they go through changes, but especially big changes in their diet, seek medical advice, to say, this is what's happening, like what are the consequences, what do I need to know, things like that, so that you can have support, because people don't have to go through it alone. There's so much support out there, even just the internet. If somebody isn't ready to reach out for help and talk about it, there are blogs just like mine, just like yours, that they can read up and find out more information. There's helplines, things like that they can go through, or if it's to the point where it's impacting on their health so much, there's treatment centers, there's health related support groups, things like that. There's so much that somebody can reach out to, that for me it's important that people know that they don't have to go through it alone, because I think that it can feel like that a lot of times. You're dealing with something, you feel like nobody can understand what's happening for you, and realistically nobody can, because nobody's in your shoes. Nobody's going through what you're going through, but people, there's professionals, there's peer support groups that can be there for you. So that's, I think, always the message I try to give, on my blog, and when I'm supporting people, that it's really courageous to be able to put up your hand and say, something's not right. This isn't working for me. I want more help. And it can take a while to get there, but once somebody does get there, just like, it sounds like for you, you're feeling like you're at a point where, it wouldn't be classified as an eating disorder. You've processed what you need to process, and, it can still be a daily challenge, I'm sure, for you, for many other people. But you can get to a point where you can live a healthy, balanced life, and it not be impacting on your emotional or physical health going forward. So,
yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think, just if anyone is listening that is a male or know a male, that would very benefit from this conversation. We just want to make sure that you always are holding a space, and then I want to hold a space for this, but also for those listening to hold a space for men to really share, because I think we we perpetuate this as well as women. We think we want men to be open and honest about what they're feeling. Yet when they do, we don't know how to handle it, right? So we're like, whoa, tears, or whoa, like sensitivity. And so, just if anyone listening, just, really look at the males in your life too, and just really encourage them and tell them that they have value and worth beyond how they look and all these things. Because I love the differentiation kind of that you said throughout. Just, I feel like when it does come to these two areas of addiction, I feel like women are more apt to control, like food addiction, while men are more apt to exercise. And not that they can't be both or the other, right? That they do cross. And so just really want to hold that space for you guys. So what would you say, kind of as we wrap up then, Heather, if anyone has been listening and they are kind of like identify with the three areas that we talked about, like what would you recommend they practically do to get the support they need?
For sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think if you're in category 1, where you're, either starting to, or you've been looking at your health and well-being, and you're focusing on meal planning, you're focusing on maybe starting an exercise plan, things like that. I would say, number one, internet is your friend. There's so much information on the internet. I love it. Pinterest is great. You can find a lot of, free resources online that can help you in that like health and wellness journey. I would also say a health coach like Brianna, or, somebody else that, that can really guide you and help you along the way, give that encouragement, either alongside you, if you need a little bit more, because I know for myself, like sometimes I just need, I need a little bit of encouragement. There might be a day where I'm like,
so true. Me too.
So yeah, I think, if you're in category 1, where, you're really, you've become health conscious, then, either decide, are you going to do it, on your own, or do you need a little bit of help, maybe from a health coach or whatnot. If you're in category 2, which we didn't really talk about too much, but food addiction, which is a really serious diagnosis to have, because it can lead to things like obesity, which obviously has a lot of health consequences and things like that. But if you do feel like maybe you're in that area of becoming addicted to something like food or exercise or something like that, I would say number 1 is your doctor, or a health professional. In Canada, we have a health line we can call. I don't know if it's in other areas, but you can call and it's confidential, and you can ask literally any question at all about your health, and you talk to a registered nurse here. So I think that could be a really easy way to be connected to a professional, in terms of health. Like, they can't obviously prescribe you things, or but it can be a really good starting place for that. But especially if there's any kind of major health concerns going on, I would say absolutely health professional, doctor. And then that can lead to, more assessments, maybe with a psychologist, psychiatrist, things like that. So first point in contact for that would be your health professional, doctor. And then if anybody is concerned about an eating disorder, even if, you're thinking, well, this isn't happening to me, but there's something in your mind saying something's not right. Something is kind of happening. Maybe it's been going on for a long time. Maybe you've been keeping it to yourself. I would say reaching out for support, either to an eating disorder helpline is a really good first point of contact. Just to get more education on it, just to find out more information about what it is, because at the end of the day, as we were talking before, it's not about food, it's about, your emotional landscape, what's happening for you internally. And the food is really, it's just part of it. Food and exercise can just be really part of it, but it's not the central focus. So helplines, I would say, again, doctor, because eating disorders or disordered eating, which is what we would call it, can have huge, huge health consequences, huge emotional consequences. So really, seeking help from a professional, I would say. So either a doctor, a therapist, a psychologist, somebody that can really tell you more about what's happening and tell you definitively, yes, this does sound like an eating disorder. Let's find out more. Let's do more assessments. Or actually, it sounds like maybe just needing a little bit more support in this area. So yeah, that's kind of, I hope that was clear.
That was great. That was very clear. Thank you so much. Wow. So many great things. And thank you so much for just sharing with us all your knowledge and your heart around this. And just hope people listening just feel encouraged and affirmed and acknowledged. And so, well, can you tell us a little bit, if people wanted to continue to learn from you on your blog, on your blogs, where can they find you on social media and your website?
Yeah, for sure. So my mental health website is just my name, so Heather Legue, and hopefully you'll put my name because it's hard to spell.
Yeah.
heatherlegue.ca, because I'm up in Canada. So that's my main site. I have a blog on there. I have resources. I have lots of information about the essential oils. So depending on what kind of interests you, if you want more mental health information, then there's categories that you can look at on there. My cooking website is cookingwithessentialoils.ca. So that one's a little bit easier to remember. But I have blog posts on there. I have free recipes that you can print out. I have a whole bunch of free stuff. I just love giving stuff away.
Yeah.
I've got email courses for both, freebies like do-it-yourself things, lots of stuff like that. And on social media, I'm on Pinterest quite a bit. So pinterest.com/hlegue. Twitter is the same. Instagram is instagram.com/heather.legue. So they're all a little bit different. But if you go to my blogs, there's all the links on there as well.
And I'll put them in the thingy.
Yeah.
And then can you tell us then a little bit about your freebie that you are giving away?
So I have, I actually developed this last year because I developed a series on my blog, another series on anxiety, because anxiety is, again, a huge, huge topic. Everybody experiences anxiety. So I thought it was really, could be really beneficial for people to know more about it and what differentiates anxiety, like everyday anxiety, from anxiety disorders, which is different. Definitely different. So I have a free ebook that is the Anxiety Pocket ebook. And so you can go on my website, or there's a subscribe link. All you have to do is put in your email, and then you get sent, it's a PDF. So I've completely edited, rebranded everything. And then I also have a workbook that goes with it. And that one is more practical ways that you can work through anxiety. So it has lots of mindfulness, visualization, a section on organization, because for me, I just know for me, if my house is a disaster, my mind is a disaster. So I thought, it was really important to, put a section in there that was dedicated to organizing. And that one is available, completely rebranded, and with tons of helpful strategies, practical strategies that you can work through anxiety to feel better. So that one's available right now as well. And then I'm planning to do more of a series as well. So things like the addiction, just so that it's easier for people to kind of take away with them, learn more information, and then learn practical strategies along the way. So hopefully if anyone's interested in that, then you start by downloading the anxiety ebook.
Yes, because by downloading that, you'll be joining her mailing list. And I was just telling her earlier, always sends out great stuff. So Heather, thank you so much for joining us and sharing. Yay! And yes, everyone, so thank you for listening this far, and just really want to encourage you to check out Heather's resources around addiction, around anxiety, and all these things, and as well as download the freebie that I'm going to be offering this month, 7 Steps to a Healthy Mind and Healthy Body. And it's just really a check where it's really reflection exercise where you can kind of take inventory and say, where is my mindset around healthy living? Where is it around food? And then you'll better be able to just go from there. And then, of course, I can offer some coaching around that if that is something you want. But yeah, I think it's just really good to reflect and see where you are, so then you can see where you need to go and who needs to give you that help. So thank you, everyone, for joining. And thanks again, Heather. And be sure to check out the blog post to get all the links and the show notes to get all the links that we mentioned. So thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Thanks.